I was in courtroom 2B, waiting for my client's bond hearing, when it happened. The room was packed, half public, half lawyers, all restless. And seated quietly at the far end was an older gentleman in a plain navy suit, wire-rimmed glasses perched low on his nose. He looked more like someone's quiet uncle than anything else. Officer Barrett stormed in like he owned the place. He had that look, tan uniform too tight across the chest, mirrored sunglasses still on indoors. He barked at a young intern near the gallery, telling her to clear out or get cuffed. She stood frozen, not sure if she had to move. That's when the older man calmly stood and said, "Officer, this is my courtroom. She's assisting counsel." Barrett scoffed. "And you are?" The man started to respond, but before the sentence left his mouth, Barrett stepped forward, too fast, too aggressively, and slapped the man clean across the face. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Then a silence fell like a heavy curtain. The man didn't fall. He just stood there, his cheek red, his expression unreadable. He calmly reached into his coat pocket and placed a sealed folder on the clerk's desk. I saw the gold initials, DOJ. And I swear, that was the moment everything began to fall apart. The clerk hesitated before touching the folder. Everyone did. It was like the air got heavier the second those three letters, DOJ, hit our eyes. Barrett stood still now. No more barking. No more swagger. Just a stiff posture, as if trying to undo what he had just done with silence. The older man, face still stinging from the slap, spoke without raising his voice, "You just struck a federal oversight judge. And I've been assigned to investigate the misconduct of officers within this district." The clerk's eyes widened. She opened the folder. Inside was a stack of signed directives, subpoenas, affidavits, digital logs, and an official appointment letter. Everything was already in motion before Barrett even entered the room. Barrett finally found his voice, "You've gotta be kidding me." "Nobody told me, because you weren't supposed to know," the man said evenly. "Your precinct, your commanding officer, your unit, all under review. And now, you've added assaulting a federal investigator to your list." Gasps broke into murmurs. People stood. Phones began recording. Barrett looked around, then over his shoulder, but no one backed him up. Even his partner shifted uncomfortably by the door. And then a new presence entered, two men in gray suits, with U.S. Marshals badges on their belts. The man nodded once. "They're here for you." Barrett's empire had been standing on a rotted foundation. Now it was starting to cave in, and fast. Next, Part 3. Officer Barrett backed away instinctively, like a cornered animal. His hand hovered near his holster, but the marshals didn't flinch, they had already dealt with men like him before. The older man, the federal oversight judge, turned his head slightly. "Don't make another mistake. That belt won't protect you from a federal holding cell." Barrett froze. The two marshals advanced. Calm. Controlled. One of them spoke, "By direct order of the U.S. Attorney's Office, you're being taken into custody for obstruction of a federal investigation, assault on a federal officer, and probable evidence tampering. You have the right to remain silent, you can't be serious," Barrett snapped. "You people don't know who I am." The judge tilted his head slightly. "We do. That's exactly why I'm here." The courtroom door opened again, this time, 3 uniformed officers from Internal Affairs entered. And trailing behind them, carrying a laptop and a sealed evidence bag, was a woman in a dark gray blazer, DOJ Forensic Audit Team. She went straight to the judge and whispered something into his ear. He nodded and turned toward the marshals. "You'll want to detain him without bail. The bank transfers came through an hour ago." Barrett's face went pale. For the first time, the courtroom wasn't watching a trial, they were watching a collapse. And it had only been 4 minutes since the slap. Barrett was cuffed without a struggle, though his jaw clenched so tightly it looked like he might shatter a molar. His eyes darted around the room, searching for backup, for support, for someone to stand up and say this was all some mistake. No one moved. Not his partner by the door. Not the bailiff. Not the DA sitting on the far bench who suddenly looked deeply interested in the floor tiles. The judge watched him with the calm stillness of someone who had seen this play out before, just never this publicly. The woman in the blazer, the forensic specialist, opened her laptop and cast it to the courtroom screen. She tapped a few keys, and then a spreadsheet filled the wall. Names. Account numbers. Wire transfer amounts. Some reaching 6 figures. Others tagged with unreported seizure, unauthorized asset forfeiture, and worse. A whisper rippled through the gallery. Someone gasped aloud. These aren't allegations, the judge said. These are confirmations. Officer Barrett's empire wasn't built with just intimidation. It was built with stolen assets, falsified reports, and a network of compromised officers. We now have probable cause to investigate no fewer than 14 others. The name at the top of the list? Sergeant Dennis Barrett. The walls that held up his authority, fear, reputation, silence, were turning to dust in front of everyone. And the worst part? The rot had started long before the slap. That just made the demolition public. As Barrett was led out of the courtroom, red-faced and breathing hard, a strange quiet settled over the room. It wasn't peace. It was realization. People began checking their phones. Texts were flying. A reporter near the back was already whispering into a mic. Live streams were picking up steam. And then came the loud chime from the forensic agent's phone. She held it up and turned to the judge. "It's starting," she said. "The warrants are hitting the precinct servers now. Internal Affairs just froze the accounts of 5 more officers. And the commissioner's office called, they want a full briefing within the hour." Barrett's partner by the door finally spoke, quietly. "I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know it was that deep." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Then you should sit down. You're about to learn a lot." And just like that, the marshals didn't leave the courtroom. They stayed. One of them closed the door. Another stood near the exits. The DOJ agent clicked to a new tab, photos, traffic stop footage, redacted memos with names slowly unblurring. The judge spoke again, but not loudly, just clearly. "This courtroom is now a federal operations center. No one leaves until we understand how far this network went. If you are on this list, or you know someone who is, speak now. Otherwise, the evidence will speak for you." Several officers shifted in their seats. One got up to leave, until the marshal stepped in front of him. "Have a seat, Officer Gaines. You're number 6. The collapse wasn't loud. It was surgical. Officer Gaines sat back down slowly, his face drained of color. Sweat pooled at his temples. No one spoke. The courtroom had shifted from a place of law to a scene of exposure. The judge, who still had not introduced himself, flipped open a thin black folder and began calling names. Officer Morales. Officer Benton. Lieutenant Shaw. Each name struck like a hammer. Each officer looked up with a mixture of confusion, guilt, and dread. "These are just the confirmed links," he said calmly. "Your roles varied. Some of you processed evidence that never reached storage. Some altered dashcam records. Others, well, let's not pretend cash seizures just disappeared." The DOJ tech flipped the screen to security footage from the department's evidence locker. It showed Barrett laughing with 2 of the now identified officers, wheeling out unmarked boxes after hours. The timestamps matched nights when official logs claimed no activity. The evidence was overwhelming, and irrefutable. Officer Morales stood up. "I didn't know what was in the boxes. I just did what he told me." The judge looked at her. "You still sign chain of custody forms. That's a federal offense." Suddenly, A new voice came through a speaker above the courtroom bench, patched in through a secure DOJ line. "This is Deputy Director Conway, Internal Oversight Division. Effective immediately, Precinct 84 is suspended from field operations pending full investigation. Officers named in the evidence logs are hereby relieved of duty and ordered to remain in custody." The courtroom door opened once more, this time revealing over a dozen federal agents in Navy windbreakers with yellow DOJ insignia. The message was clear: Barrett's fall was just the beginning. The entire system was being torn apart, one thread at a time. The federal agents moved efficiently, no shouting, no drama. Just methodical collection of phones, badges, and service weapons. One by one, officers were escorted to a holding area set up in the hallway. Some protested. Most didn't. The judge finally closed his folder and looked out across the courtroom, now half empty. "For too long, you operated under the belief that silence was protection," he said. "That intimidation and loyalty to the wrong people could shield you from accountability." He removed his glasses and set them on the bench. "My name is Judge Malcolm Trenholm. I'm not just a federal oversight judge. I was also a former public defender in this city for 12 years. I've seen firsthand the damage this department caused, not by accident, but by design." His voice, though calm, now had weight. "I was sent here with one purpose, to confirm whether the corruption in this precinct was isolated. What I've found, is an organized ring, protected by silence, hidden in plain sight, and profiting off fear." He looked down at his watch. "It's been exactly 37 minutes since Officer Barrett slapped me in front of this courtroom." He looked back up. "And in that time, his career, his influence, and the fortress he built have crumbled." He let the word settle. "Then, let's keep going." The marshals opened a new file, this one marked civilian complaints sealed. The list inside had over 60 names. It was time to bring in the victims. As the sealed file opened, the courtroom took on a new kind of tension, one not of fear, but anticipation. The names weren't officers. They were civilians. Dozens of them. "These are the people you silenced," Judge Trenholm said, flipping through the pages. "Some were arrested without cause. Others had their property taken under the guise of probable suspicion. A few were labeled as threats just for recording your behavior." He looked around. "They're here." The side door opened, and one by one, ordinary people stepped inside. A nurse. A school custodian. A small business owner. A teenage boy with his mother. Each of them walked in with hesitation, but also with something else, purpose. One woman, probably in her early 60s, clutched a worn leather envelope. She stepped up first. Her voice cracked only once. "I filed a complaint 2 years ago when Officer Barrett pulled my grandson from our car and told me, he fits the look. I never got a call back. But I saved everything. His badge number. The time. Even the receipt from the pharmacy we were leaving." She handed it to the DOJ agent. The judge gave a single nod. "You're heard now." Then came a man who had been beaten during a traffic stop, his face had never healed properly. Then a college student whose phone was smashed for trying to record a wrongful search. Each story was more damning than the last. And each one was followed by something more powerful than evidence, truth spoken publicly. For years, these people were dismissed, ignored, or threatened. But now their testimonies were entered directly into a federal investigation, and they weren't just witnesses, they were proof. Barrett's empire hadn't just been built on corruption. It had been built by stepping on these very people. And now, they had come back to tear it all down. By now, the courtroom felt transformed, not into a place of punishment, but of reckoning. The civilians stood side by side near the bench. Behind them, the DOJ agents organized their files into folders marked Testimony, Evidence, and Pending Indictment. Screens displayed side-by-side footage, police reports next to video clips the department claimed had never existed. But they had. The victims had kept them. Judge Trenholm turned to the remaining officers, those not yet in custody, not yet named, but clearly shaken. "You still have a chance to speak," he said. "To come forward. If you helped cover this up, now is the moment to decide whether you walk out of here or follow Barrett in cuffs." Silence. Then a single voice. Officer Laramie, a quiet veteran with over 20 years on the force, stood up slowly. "I knew," he said. "I didn't know how far it went. But I knew he was dirty. And I stayed quiet because I thought the system would never hold him accountable." Judge Trenholm locked eyes with him. "And now? I'll give everything I've got." He walked to the front, set his badge on the clerk's desk, and asked for a pen. The DOJ agent handed him a sworn affidavit form. One domino triggered the next. 2 more officers followed. One whispered, "I buried a complaint in 21. Another said, "He made us falsify reports." The courtroom wasn't just exposing Barrett's empire, it was digging up the roots of a culture that had gone untouched for years. And now, with federal oversight, civilian testimony, and officers flipping from the inside, that culture was finally being dismantled piece by piece. But Judge Trenholm wasn't done yet. He reached for the final file on the bench, marked not with a name, but with a title, the Commissioner. The courtroom had become still again, but not from fear. This time, it was anticipation. Everyone saw the label on the thick envelope Judge Trenholm now held, Commissioner Harold Vance, Classified Oversight Dossier. He placed it on the bench and spoke with quiet gravity. "Every empire has a designer. A builder. Barrett didn't operate this alone. He was protected, by someone who gave him cover, suppressed internal investigations, redirected civilian complaints, and signed off on budgets that funded this behavior." He opened the envelope. Inside, personal memos, direct communications between Barrett and Vance, digital transcripts, and signed immunity rejections, proof the commissioner had been warned and chose to protect the rod instead of remove it. Judge Trenholm turned toward the courtroom entrance. "Bring him in." Gasps echoed. Commissioner Harold Vance, the man who publicly called his officers the gold standard of law enforcement, was escorted in by 2 U.S. Marshals, no longer in a polished uniform but in plain clothes, wrists cuffed. He didn't speak. Didn't look around. His empire had fallen before he even walked through the door. The judge raised one final order. Effective immediately, the Oversight Board is placing the entire 84th Precinct under federal receivership. All command staff are suspended. Civilian review panels will begin this week, and restitution hearings will follow. The victims in the gallery, those who were ignored, silenced, belittled, stood as one. Some cried. Some smiled. Some just breathed, finally free of a weight that had sat on their lives for years. Judge Trenholm looked out across the room, his final words echoing like a verdict, "Justice delayed is not justice denied." But once it begins, it does not stop. The gavel fell.